This is the DJI RS LiDAR Hub, and this is the new Focus Pro LiDAR Hub. I'm Tom Waugh, co-founder of Ignite Digi, and on this video I'm going to talk through the differences of these two LiDAR hubs, as well as a deep dive, and I mean a deep dive on the DJI transmission and DJI Focus Pro ecosystems. Let's get started. To start, the RS LiDAR Hub, the original, had two 1/4-inch mounting holes, and it made it quite awkward to rig. So on the cables end, you had this 6-pin in USB-C, which would go to the transmitter. Then you would have the dual USB-C, which goes to the LiDAR. The D-tap, which was your power source, so a V-lock or a gold mount battery. And then the last was the single USB-C, which was to the focus motor. And then on the actual body of the hub, you had this USB-C port. So this was just for control. So this would send gimbal control to the RS3 or RS4 Pro, or we also made a cable to go to the Ronin 2. This is the new Focus Pro LiDAR Hub, and it's much a neater solution. So you've got this rectangular shape, you've got M4 mounting holes up here to go to the transmitter itself, and you've got your 1/4-inch down here for your rig. So on the plugs, you've got the same USB-C and 6-pin, which go into the transmitter. You've then got the single USB-C, which goes to the motor, and you'll notice an extra warning here. And then last but not least is the dual USB-C to the LiDAR. And then instead of the USB socket and the D-tap, you have this 7-pin Lemo. So this is not only a power input, it's also a control output for the gimbals. In the box, DJI include these 1/4-inch and the M4 screws. They're all captive, and on top you can see they've got both a hex head and a slot, so for a screwdriver. So here it is mounted with the M4s on the transmitter. It's a really neat solution. You can see down here, it doesn't add too much thickness. You've obviously got cables out of each side, but it does, because it uses these, you can mount it down here. You can also mount it on the other side in 2 positions. For those who haven't used it before, and for those who have, but maybe have forgotten, the purpose of the LiDAR hubs is to connect the DJI transmitter, the DJI motor, and the DJI LiDAR. So in this setup, this LiDAR can be the new Focus Pro LiDAR. It can also be the older RS LiDAR. The motor can be the new Focus Pro motor, or it can be the older RS motors. And of course, the DJI transmitter, there is only one version of that. The first purpose of the hub is to feed power from the input to the 3 devices, the transmitter, the motor, and the LiDAR. The second and very important purpose is to connect them by data as well. So the data from the LiDAR goes to the transmitter, gives you overlays on the high bright monitor. The focus position of the motor goes to the LiDAR, and they feed each other and control each other. So it's a really important part of the ecosystem to allow you to have the full use of the system. So without the LiDAR hub, you could use the LiDAR with the motor, but you wouldn't have the overlays, and you could of course use the transmitter just for video and not have all the other stuff. The last purpose of the hub is to send gimbal control. So that's pan, tilt, roll, recenters, run, stop, all of those basic gimbal functions out to the RS3, RS4 or Ronin 2. As of September 2024, DJI are stocking both of these LiDAR hubs and saying that they're for different purposes. The Focus Pro LiDAR Hub, they're saying, is for use only on the RS3 and RS4 Pros gimbals, and therefore that's the reason they only are including the 7-pin to dual USB-C cable. So the purpose of this cable is to draw power and control from those small gimbals and power the transmitter, the LiDAR, and the focus motor. So you don't need an external battery in this setup. The RS LiDAR Hub, the original one, they're saying is good for use off gimbal, so using the D-tap power for off gimbal use of the LiDAR. But they're also saying you can use it on gimbal via the USB-C port. So this one has the full functionality options, and this one is function limited, they're saying. That got us a bit confused, because when it launched, or when it was teased with the RS4 Pro launch back in April, all of the DJI influencers had both this 7-pin to dual USB-C cable and a 7-pin to D-tap cable, and they were showing it in use off gimbal. When we finally got this a week ago from DJI, the site did say it included a D-tap or P-tap cable, but when we received it, it didn't have that cable. They've since clarified that they're not including that cable and that they're not stocking that cable because this LiDAR hub is only for use on gimbal. Further confused by this statement, we did some testing and found that this LiDAR hub is good for up to 17 volts of external power, and therefore we came up with 3 cables. The first cable is the DTAP to 7 pin that DJI promised. We've clearly labelled 11 to 17 volt input on the DTAP side, and then DJI Focus Pro LiDAR Hub on the 7 pin end. So this will take power from a V mount or a gold mount and put it into the hub, which will then power all the devices. The next cable is a 2 pin to 7 pin. So this takes a 2 pin Lemo power source, 8 to 17 volts, to the 7 pin on the LiDAR hub. So this is useful for people using our power breakout or other 2 pin Lemo power sources. Last but certainly not least is the Ronin 2 6 pin to 7 pin on the LiDAR hub. And the purpose of this cable is to feed 14.4 volt out of the power hub on the Ronin 2, feed it into the hub. Secondly to that, it does control. So it's taking control that's receiving through transmission. So anything you've got plugged into the high bright monitor, master wheels, control deck, 4D grip on the side, any of those pan, tilt, roll, run, stop inputs, it's passing through to the gimbal. So you can have LiDAR with the Ronin 2, happy days. In this next section, I'm going to talk through USB-C, USB-C PD, power delivery, and USB-C power in the way that DJI has implemented it. So USB-C refers to the actual connector itself. It doesn't define any more detail than that. Obviously you can see here I've got an Angelbird one, which is a larger outside, and this is the DJI one. So USB-C PD stands for power delivery, and that's a standard that the USB sort of people have worked on, and it defines different voltages that are available for different devices. So if you have a look here on the 140 watt MacBook Pro charger, they're defined the different voltages that they will do over PD. So 28 volts, 20.5 volts, 15 volts, 12 volts, 9 volts, and 5.2 volts. So all of those different voltages are available by negotiation of your device. So when you plug in a cable, you plug in your MacBook. If your MacBook Pro is the 16 inch and it can take the 140 watts, then it will say, hey, I can take 28 volts, give me full power, and then, negotiate down from there. So obviously the idea of that is that to have a single cable, a single charger that can do a wide variety of devices, but without smoking devices with high voltage. You don't want to charge your phone with 28 volts. It will immediately blow up the battery. So that's what the USB-C standard PD works to, and it's a really safe standard because of that negotiation. In terms of DJI using the USB-C PD standard, things that have batteries in it, so the actual batteries for the grip or for the small gimbals, other things like the RC Plus, the little Mavic, the Mavics themselves that have USB-C on them, all of those follow the USB-C PD standard, because when you're charging a battery, you definitely do not want to feed the wrong voltage in. So that's really good, and they all follow the standard. The issues come in some of the devices. So the Focus Pro ecosystem, that does not follow the USB-C standard. So I'm going to talk through DJI's standard that they've set themselves, and also some of the raw voltage USB-C cables that you'll come across in the ecosystem. So here on the Focus Pro motor, you'll notice this voltage range, 6.6 to 17.2. That's pretty unusual for a USB-C device. And the reason it has that is because this does not follow the USB-C PD standard. This device will not negotiate higher voltage from your MacBook Pro charger or that sort of thing, because that's not what it's designed for. It's designed to work within the DJI ecosystem and use DJI cables. So within these cables, they have their own standard. So when you plug this into here and plug this into your RS2, RS3, RS4, whatever of those smaller gimbals that have the USB-C port, it negotiates 8 volts. So if you tried to plug in a standard cable, you would get 5 volts, but with their cables, you get 8 volts, which is enough for these devices like the LiDAR, the motor, that sort of thing. So that's all fine and doesn't become a problem until you introduce this cable, which some may call the death cable. This is a DTAP to USB-C that doesn't follow any USB-C PD standard. It just delivers raw 11 to 17 volts from your V-Lock or whatever DTAP source into the motor. The motor itself will be fine. The problem is that this next USB-C then has that raw voltage. So if you accidentally plugged in your phone to that port, you would expose your phone to, you know, whatever voltage, 16 volts, say, a pretty high charged V-Lock would be. So this is why DJI have this little warning here on the cable, but I just want to reiterate this, of all the cables in this ecosystem, this is the most dangerous one. Now that you've got that knowledge, let's talk through the LiDAR hubs and the power risks associated with them. First up, I've got the older RS LiDAR Hub. So obviously I've got DTAP out of the battery. This battery is about half charged, so it's 15 volts or so. So the power's coming in, it's going out to the DJI devices, all of which can handle the voltage, no problem. So I've been handheld, I'm using this with the DTAP battery. I'm going to the RS4 gimbal or the RS3 gimbal, and I've got the Raptor. So I need a V-Lock somewhere on the system to power the camera. I'm also going to power all the LiDAR system from the RS3 because I've got this older LiDAR hub and I can't power all of this from the USB-Cs on the gimbal. So I quickly change it over, I move the things over, I plug everything in, and then in the heat of the moment, I go to connect the gimbal to the LiDAR hub, but I misunderstand, I rush, whatever. So I'll show you there, no power because it's just communication. But if you accidentally plugged into this free port on the motor, all of a sudden 15 volts. So what you would be doing is sending 15 volts out of here into the gimbal port. So that gimbal port is made to output 5 or 8 volts, not have a 16 volt input. So essentially you'll smoke the gimbal. You'll smoke the board in the gimbal, and this is what happened on the RS4 Pro launch. Some of the YouTubers did that, which I'll talk about in the next LiDAR hub. Now on the Focus Pro LiDAR, let's have a look at how that's working. So we've got the dual USB-C up here, and that's the 2 ports on the front of the RS4 Pro, or would be the middle and bottom ports of the RS3 Pro, and this system works with the RS3 Pro. And that's negotiating 8 volts from each port into here, and then 8 volts is going out to the LiDAR, 8 volts out to the motor, and 8 volts out to the transmission. So let's double check that. There we go, 7.9 volts I'm getting on the motor. So pretty much 8 volts. So this is obviously very safe. You've got the 2 ports here blocked. The only port left is the rear port for the camera control. So I guess in theory, if you were not paying attention, you could plug 8 volts and plug it into the back. I haven't tested that because I don't want to smoke my gimbal, but that may be okay because the USB-C ports on the gimbal are kind of made for 8 volts. So that's probably likely to be safe. Obviously I can't guarantee it though. So let's change it up. Let's go to use a DTAP to 7-pin cable, which is what DJI had sort of shown in the RS4 Pro launch videos and the Focus Pro LiDAR system launch videos. So let's unplug there. So obviously we're not going to be using gimbal power. We're going to be taking the, I'm going to take this off. Let's take this battery off. I'm going to be using the DTAP on here. And then I'm going to be going into the LiDAR hub here. So you can see, so again, everything powers up because I'm 15 volts. Everything here is good for 15 volts. Now let's check what we're getting. We should get 15 volts out here. Yep, there we are, 15 volts coming out of the motor. So this is the scenario some of the YouTubers had, and in doing so, they created this, and then they were thinking, with this new LiDAR hub, how do I now control the gimbal? So I'm powering everything from there, but how do I get control of the gimbal while also powering from a DTAP? And the thing is, with this LiDAR hub, you can't, because they dropped that small USB-C socket that the RS LiDAR hub, so the logic was that you connect the focus motor to the transmission port or the motor port, and that would pass comms back to the gimbal. Problem is, that might pass comms, but it also passes 15 volts into a USB-C port that is made for 8 volts, 5 volts and 8 volts out, not 15 volts in. So this 100% will smoke your gimbal. So if I plug that in now, you would watch that board go pop. So this is where I think DJI had these issues with the early users. And so rather than include the DTAP to 7-pin, they decided it was too risky and that they would sort of encourage people to use the old RS LiDAR Hub for off gimbal, and then encourage people only to use their dual USB-C to 7-pin, and therefore negate some of the risk that is associated with this setup. Obviously, we think you're professionals and that you need to have options, and whether that's a DTAP, a 2-pin, or the Ronin 2 options, you know, we think you need that. But obviously, you are taking some risk by using the cables that we make, in the sense that you're opening up a possibility to plug this port into these ports and smoking your gimbal. Or if you plug that, loop that out to your phone or another USB-C device that wasn't made for 15 volts. So DJI put this nice bright yellow label on the focus motor feed cable from the LiDAR Hub, and you know, might be worth you just getting one of these USB-C testers. It just gives you the voltage and will just mean that you can check your different power paths and make sure that you're not going to smoke something. The purpose of this video is so that you can understand the system and where DJI are coming from. But yeah, just understand the risks. The next part of this ecosystem that has some risks is the DJI Focus Pro grip or hand grip. And that has a few USB-C ports. First up is the RSS port here on the side, and that's exactly the same as the rear port on the RS4 Pro. So that's for camera control cables, of which we make a bunch for Komodo, Fisher, Sony FX6, etc. And they all work on there. The next one is down the bottom here is the BG21, so the battery grip, that port. Now that is USB-C PD. So only use your sort of wall wart, MacBook Pro charger, that sort of thing to charge these. Do not use the death cable, the DTAP to USB-C to charge that battery. That is very dangerous. You are using unregulated power into something that is made to take regulated, negotiated power. So don't do that. So again, you know, if you're using the grip, make sure this cable is nowhere near your rig. Next up, these ports up here. So you've got the LiDAR one and the Focus Pro motor, and they are very similar to the RS gimbal ports. So they are negotiated, you know, negotiated 8 volt outputs. So this goes to the motor, this goes to the LiDAR, and all happy days. If you are using the LiDAR Hub, you cannot use the Focus Pro grip. This is an exclusive item. You can only use this with the motor and the LiDAR. If you are using the LiDAR Hub, do not involve the Focus Pro grip. And I'll show you why. Remember when I had my little voltage checker? So I'm powering off DTAP here, I'm going here, 15 volts. So if I then went, I'll just connect my Focus Pro grip to the focus motor. Boom, 15 volts coming into here, pop goes the weasel, and you've ridden your hand grip off. Done, just like that. So I've had a few questions already about this, and the question is, can I use DJI transmitter while I'm using the hand grip? And as I said in the previous section, you can't use the LiDAR Hub while also using the hand grip. You can do this setup, which I'll talk through now. So I've got the BG21 powering the grip. The grip is then doing USB-C, both DJI cables, out to the LiDAR and to the focus motor. And that's an ecosystem all connected itself. So I'm getting the picture back here from the LiDAR camera, I'm getting the overlays, I'm getting lens profiles, I'm getting control, that sort of thing. Then I can take the hand unit, so not the hand grip, the hand unit, and I can connect in through the menus here. I can link to this motor. So both the operator and the focus puller can have control of this single focus motor. And obviously you get the AMF where it's moving, this is moving, and then you know the operator's thing can move, can override it. So that works. This link to this motor is via an internal 2.4 gigahertz, which is about 100 to 150 meters of range. You can then use the DJI transmission just as a standard video transmitter. So in this setup, I would have this on the back of the camera. I've got this on the side of the camera. This is powering this setup, and I'm powering the transmission off a DTAP to 6-pin cable, which does come with the transmission combo kit. They do include that, but this is one of our ones. And basically then SDI, HDMI from your camera to here. So then your focus puller would have the receiver or the high bright monitor at the other end. So they would be receiving the video from the camera, but they would not be getting the LiDAR overlays like they could be getting if they were using the LiDAR Hub. And that's because you've decided that you want your operator to also have control. So if you get rid of this, you bring back the LiDAR Hub and you connect it all again, then you can have the LiDAR overlays. The limitation here still is that to use the hand unit, you still have to use the internal here. So even with the bracket and the high bright on top of this, the focus control here does not go via transmission. It does for the 4D and the Inspire 3, but not for the Focus Pro ecosystem. So you still have a range limitation connection here, even though you have like 3 kilometer range with transmission to the monitor, and you'll have settings for the motor and that sort of thing. You can't use the hand unit. But if your focus puller needs to have long range and you want to use the LiDAR Hub and everything, the only way to do it currently, other than through our control deck or through the Noto wheels, from a DJI perspective, the only way is to put the 4D grip on the side of the high bright monitor and then use that focus wheel. So if you're using that focus wheel, that will talk via transmission to this single motor, but obviously, you can't get nice hard stops, you don't get all that sort of thing, you're just using a wheel. So, it works, but it's not really a solution. You can't use this hand unit via transmission for these motors. And this has been a big push by us in the last few months with DJI, with backing from customers, pro users, that sort of thing, trying to say, hey DJI, you've got this great ecosystem, or 2 ecosystems, DJI Transmission and DJI Focus Pro. Why are they not integrated? They're sort of integrated, but they're not fully integrated. And so our hope is, in the future, you'll be able to connect the bracket, you'll be able to connect the high bright, you'll be able to use transmission from the high bright receiver to here, out through the LiDAR Hub, to a motor, link out to the second motor, link out to the third motor, and you'll have full fizz with LiDAR overlays and everything via transmission, which is obviously 3 kilometer-ish range. So this is what we're pushing, and we're hoping they will do it. But we'd love your help. If you can help comment on the Facebook post and that sort of thing, that will help DJI realize that, hey, this is actually an important feature for pro users. So I know this is a really long video, and I know, but I know it's a confusing ecosystem or ecosystems. And so, this is why we wanted to do this video, because it was confusing for us at the start, and we wanted to make sense of it. So this is obviously current as of September 2024, this video. It could change with a firmware update for the transmission system or that sort of thing. All of this could work better together. So again, if that happens, we'll create another video and we'll explain the updates to this. But yeah, if you have any questions, please get in touch, and I highly recommend you just slow down when you're rigging with the Focus Pro system, because you've got that risk of raw voltage via USB-C. That is not best practice really to use that in a product, and so I think DJI are probably regretting it, because they're getting a lot of repairs being sent in for Focus Pro grips or gimbals, that sort of thing, that have been fried, where people don't necessarily understand what power, what voltage, where it's going, how it's, that sort of thing, because they're treating USB-C like their MacBook Pro. They're expecting it to just negotiate the power and it all works. So after all this detail, you're probably wondering, which LiDAR hub should I buy? Well, if you've already got the RS LiDAR Hub, then you can just keep using it. The only real benefits to going to the Focus Pro LiDAR Hub are, 1, neatness. It's 1 less cable to the gimbal, and also it just mounts really nicely to the transmitter. The other benefit is that with the dual USB-C to 7-pin cable, you can then power it off the RS3 Pro or RS4 Pro. And that does lower your risk of getting the death cable out, which is the D-tap to USB-C that I include with the Focus Pro motors, because everything's just going to power when you boot it up. So you're going to be like, okay, everything's working. I don't need to get additional power out. There is still risk though. Either way, either hub, either rig, you still have the Focus Pro motor or the RS motor with the dual USB-C ports. And the risk is that you have one cable connected here and you have a bare port. And this bare port, depending on your rig, may be 8 volts, it may be 15 volts. So just be aware, if you're setting up these rigs, it can be worth taping over with red tape or black tape, whatever, the spare port. So if you're running 2 motors, do it on the second motor. And the idea of that is to just stop people willy-nilly plugging in thinking, oh, I'll just charge my phone off that USB-C, or I'll plug in this other device that takes USB-C. No, you don't want to charge your tentacle sink off 15 volt USB-C. So just keep that in mind. It can be worth just putting some tape over there so someone goes, oh, I wonder why that's taped. And then they have to ask you before they plug it in. So both LiDAR hubs are good. Both of them actually function the same in the sense that there's no additional software or functionality other than what I've spoke about with rigging and power. DJI are still selling both options. If you didn't have the RS LiDAR Hub, then I would probably buy the Focus Pro LiDAR Hub rather than buying the RS one. I've really enjoyed taking you on this journey into the deep dive of Focus Pro and Transition ecosystems, and we're looking at making more content like this because we know the ecosystems are confusing, and it's nice to distill it into a video. If you're interested in any of our products, check out our store, or you can DM me on Instagram or send me an email.